we're going to talk about choosing your words. That's a lot of what editors do. They deal with word choice. Words have two meanings. They're denotation and connotation. Denotation means the actual meaning of the word, what it stands for. And you can find out denotation by looking in a dictionary. Which dictionary you use is up to you. There are various reliable dictionaries, depending on which part of the world you're in also. And choose one and stick to it is the best advice. The Oxford dictionaries are very good outside of America. And for those who are interested, you can get, there's a program called Golden Dict, D-I-C-T. You have Golden Dict, which is a really good program because first of all, you can get it in Windows or Linux and maybe even Mac. And second of all, it can use many dictionaries at once. So, okay, we'll demo Golden Dict for you. Okay, well there's Saxon. For those of you who are wondering what Saxon was, Merriam-Webster gives the etymology from late Latin, blah, blah, blah. A member of a Germanic people that entered and conquered England with the Angles and Jutes in the 5th century, and so on. Then Random House Webster's Unabridged, a member of Germanic people in ancient times dwelling near the mouth of the Elbe. Then the American Heritage Dictionary. Then the Oxford English Dictionary, complete with lots of examples of its historical use. Then Webster's Third New International Dictionary, then an online dictionary, then Wikipedia if I wanted it, which I don't. Anyway, how many dictionaries you use at once is up to you, but if you want to get a lot in one place, there it is.
But where do we get all the files from?
Well,
we have to have different separate files.
There's different ways you can get them. You can buy them, some of them. You can go online and not buy them. You might give me your key, you know, a stick, and ask for copies. Anyway, it's a good program. It's also free.
What about Google?
What about Google? Well, Google is not a dictionary, right?
But there is Google Dictionary.
There's a Google dictionary. Really?
Yeah, in the phone, online.
Which means when you can look it up, you know.
Yeah, you can look things up in Google. It'll send you to dictionary.com or this place or that place. And depending which place you use, you'll get a different dictionary.
You should try to use the same dictionary.
Try to use the same dictionaries consistently. There are differences in the convention used by different dictionaries. Hyphenation may differ according to which dictionary you use. Spelling may differ according to which dictionary you use. So stick one, choose one and stick with it. That's the most important thing.
Does the BBT recommend one dictionary?
Yeah, you look on the style sheet. We specify the dictionary.
Okay.
Keeping in mind that that's for America.
Right.
Okay. So denotation is the simple meaning of the word, like chair or house or lie or what word you may have. Then there's connotation, which is the feeling of the word, the associations of the word, the implications of the word, the associated contexts that get drawn in with the word. So, which, yeah. So for example, these are all words that you can use for to introduce a quotation or to close out a quotation. It's true, he said. Quite the neutral word. Quietly, it's true, he confirmed. What's the implication there? You can back it up. Yes, not just hearsay. Yeah. It's true, he remarked. Kind of the implication there?
He said.
How is remarked different from said?
Well, by the way.
More, yeah, by the way.
By the way.
You know? It's not like Lincoln remarked 20 years ago, or Sukadev Goswami remarked, my dear king. It's just offhanded. It's true, he whispered.
In hushed tones. Yeah.
There's something secret about that.
Say it too loud. Yeah.
It's true, he insisted. What's the implication there?
Trying to be not open-minded, that's what it's true.
One at a time.
It's being, it's not being open-minded, that's what he wants to say.
He's not being open-minded.
Forceful.
He's certainly being pushy, forceful. I would suspect that it's not true.
Yes.
There's could be different meanings to that.
Yeah. I wasn't there, he insisted.
Right? No.
For anyone
It
else.
wasn't me.
Yeah, but to me, I insisted.
Maybe it is true, but he's fighting against somebody who has a different opinion.
Yeah, he's either being forceful or perhaps lying. You know, the different, but it's not the same as said. It's true, he complained. It's true, he muttered. Vowed, claimed, admitted. That's a really devious one sometimes. You know,
Confession.
I'm a member of ISKCON, he admitted.
This one.
I support the GBC, he admitted. Something criminal about it. Stated, like said, but a little more formal. Explained.
Expounded upon.
Argued. Ordered. Blurted out.
You didn't mean to say that?
Didn't mean to say it, it just came out. Yelled. Snorted. Bragged, barked, snarled. A long way from said. So which word you choose can make a big difference, even though they all mean that he uttered something. The denotation is fairly well the same. The connotations are very different. Newspapers and media make use of these differences if they're so inclined, or you're more upright. Newspapers typically want to see a lot of said, unless you've got a justification for snorted or blurted out or admitted. Yes?
Would you say that the insisted is just a more subtle way of saying argued, or is there a distinct difference?
Insisted and argued. Yeah, now which one do I want? The maybe insisted is, I'd have to look at the story and say, do I want insisted or do I want argued? Maybe there are 6 of one, half a dozen of the other that might be equivalent, or there's maybe my character is an argumentative person and I want to highlight that, or maybe he's he's saying something which is contrary to all the evidence, in which case insisted might help get across that he's on a slim grounds. But this is a lot of what, as an editor, you do. You look and say, do I want said? Do I want confirmed? Do I want explained? Which one fits the context best? Said is a good default, and I better have a good reason for snorted or bragged.
Especially in a newspaper or something like that, that would give away your neutrality.
You're biased, therefore your better newspapers default to said. And your yellow journalists and especially your internet sites, blogs, and so on, they love admitted, argued, bragged, and so on. This goes not only for verbs, but for all sorts of words. A place is different from an abode, because they have a different feel to it, a different connotation. Residence, again, is again more formal and in a certain way. Home is more warm and cozy than a house. Intestines are different from guts.
What's the difference between yelled and barked?
Between yellow and biased?
And barked.
Bark.
Yelled and barked.
Yellow and bark. Well, I think bark means you're like a dog. You could yell, hey, stop! Hey, stop. But bark is like, sergeant might bark, or a really nasty person might bark. But you're calling the person a dog. Because that's what dogs do, is they bark. If you're neutral about it, you might just say he said or he ordered. If you really want to, it doesn't have to be negative. It could just be, that's what sergeants do. They bark. They're abrupt and so on.
That's why it said barking orders, isn't it?
Yeah, you bark orders.
Yeah. Before, that's the verb.
Or you might get out of my house. He barked. Again, each one of these words is at your disposal to get across a certain picture of what's going on. Connotation. Words have sound and tone and color. Dirty, unclean, impure, soiled, sullied, stained, tainted, unsterile, unpurified, dusty, muddy, muddied, unwashed, black, blackened, polluted, defiled, smutty, cruddy, grimy, grungy, greasy, filthy, and foul. They're all more or less saying dirty, but some of them are more clinical, like unsterile or unclean or impure. Some of them are highly charged, like polluted, defiled, smutty.
Filthy, it's quite filthy.
Filthy.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't say, you unclean liar. That would be filthy, or you foul.
Unpurified liar.
You unpurified liar. Okay, no questions about this. Or good. These are some sins to avoid or to help your author avoid. Cliches we've talked about. Exaggeration.
Yes.
What happens when you exaggerate is that you risk losing your reader's trust. If you say that it was 20 when it was really more likely 5, or later proven to be 5, when you say that it was tumultuous when it was inconsequential, when you say that it was dramatic when it was really pedestrian, when you exaggerate, you...
Hyperbole?
Yeah, hyperbole is a form of exaggeration. When you exaggerate, you jeopardize your relationship with your reader.
They lose trust.
Hmm?
They lose trust.
I can't hear you.
They lose trust.
They lose trust. Your reader wants to know as he reads, can I trust him? Can I trust him to tell me the history, or can I trust him to tell me the results of this scientific trial? Can I trust him to tell me what the political situation is? And can I trust him to tell me the geography? Can I trust him to give me an accurate account of what's what? Once you're caught in an exaggeration, you stand to lose your reader's trust in you. You're jeopardizing the relationship. You know, like if you have a friend, you know that he's always stretching you. Like when we had a godbrother, he was known for telling all these things that Prabhupada said to him, and it was understood widely that Prabhupada hadn't said, 10% of it. But once I was with Prabhupada, and he told me this, and Prabhupada told me that, and people, after a while, they just laughed him off because they knew it was just another story from such and such.
What is in your cliches?
I couldn't hear.
Cliches.
Cliches.
It was yesterday.
It's like a
Cliche.
stereotypical word used over and over again.
Yeah, you weren't here yesterday. Yeah, we talked about it. Cliche is an old, overused expression. Yeah. So stick to the facts. I mean, there is such a thing as artful exaggeration when if you're doing a farce or something like that. You said there were 10 billion people trying to get into a temple for Mangalarti. There is a kind of exaggeration that can be used for fun or what have you. But as a general principle, stick to your facts, and if it's 5, live with it. It was 5. So that your reader will trust you, your reader will see you as a reliable reporter or a reliable guide. Excessive exclamation is a sin to avoid. First of all, just he exclaimed, if people are always exclaiming and so on, that already. But particularly the exclamation mark. You're all familiar with the exclamation. In journalism, they're called screamers. They're sometimes called screamers. The reason being that they scream. And if you fill your prose with exclamation points, then the reader quickly sees that everything is so exciting, everything is so great, everything is so important, everything is so blah, blah, blah. Exclamation, exclamation. Calm down.
He's sparing me.
If you choose your words right, then the reader should see how dramatic or interesting or what have you your state, your story is. If you have to add an exclamation point, maybe you're just making up for weak writing. Now there are places for exclamation points. Fire! You probably wouldn't put that with a full stop, period. The exclamation certainly does have its place, but it should be used with restraint. That's the general principle. And you can cut those exclamation points. You see lots of them, just cut them down. The exception is Tom Wolfe, who one of his trademarks was to do things like use 12 exclamation points in a row at the end of one sentence for effect. If you were Tom Wolfe, you could do that. Otherwise, double exclamation points are considered a sign of a person who's just never properly been trained in writing. Exclamation points come singly.
Or exclamation, question mark.
Yeah, they're, the question mark in parentheses now is considered juvenile. There was a time when it was perhaps seen as a useful device, but now it's just considered childish. The scholars know everything in period, parentheses, question mark. That's just not done anymore. Needless intensifiers. We talked before about the verys and the extremely's and we didn't mention extremely, but the extremely's and exceedingly's and terribly's and overwhelmingly's, tumultuously's and intensifiers. Again, you tell your story with good, strong facts, and you won't need to rely on these things. Bogus absolutes. What's an absolute? It's a universal. So if I say death is certain, that's an absolute.
Yeah.
It admits of no contrary instances.
It's not bogus.
It's not that death is like sometimes yes, or the majority of cases, or it's an absolute. There are other things that are, it's either on or off. It's either all or nothing. You're either pregnant or you're not. It's absolute.
Almost.
Not kind of right.
Not kind of pregnant.
She looked kind of pregnant.
There's no.
No, I didn't mean that.
But these are absolute. 100% sure. It's an absolute. Even sure is an absolute. So you get to these absolute statements, and if they're not absolute, in fact, you're losing credibility again. If you say something like, everyone knows, it's an absolute. It admits of no exceptions. So all that has to happen is, I say, well, I don't know. And there you are. You're finished. And I have to go back, well, most people know. Or everyone intelligent knows. But it's not universally true, although I claimed it was universally true. There's also the implied all. when you make a general statement, like, let's see, Indians are the most cultured people. There's an implied all there. Or if I said Harvard students are the most cultured among students, there's an implied all. And if I meet a Harvard student who's a boor, who's an oaf in his behavior, then my statement just collapsed.
Overgeneralization.
If I used, men are inconsiderate, there's an implied all there. All men are inconsiderate. And if you meet one who's a gentleman and considerate, then your statement just went down. You say, the men I know are mostly, now you're in a different territory. So watch out for bogus absolutes. Jargon. You know what jargon is? It's the language of a particular group. And it's perfectly good within that group. Just about every group has its jargon. There's computer science jargon, there's nuclear science jargon, there's sociology jargon, there's biblical scholarship jargon, and there's ISKCON jargon. And it's all fine within the group who use it and share it and mutually understand it. But once you go out, your jargon may be opaque, incomprehensible, strange. What are you talking about? Or it may send a really different message than the one that you had in mind.
Yeah.
Well, I talked yesterday about greeting the deities, which makes sense to us, but for other people, it's like, hi, deities. Or, all sorts of jargon of that nature. You want to be careful about it, make sure that people understand that you're in the right group, that you're writing for the group, or that the group you're talking to, rather that your audience is all within the group that accepts the jargon and finds it useful. And also that you're not using jargon that typifies you as something you don't want to be. There's a jargon of criminals, for example. They have their own cant, their own language. There's the jargon of drug addicts, which a lot of ISKCON jargon has tended to be. There's, a lot of it which just started in the 1960s and never left.
Police.
Some of it's become part of general language also, but I overdosed on croissant. Even some of it's become very mainstream, spaced out as sort of this old 1960s psychedelic jargon, which is now fairly mainstream. But anyway, there's lots of jargon that you'd rather not be associated with. So you want to think about it. Or you may just be using, again, technical jargon. Trying to impress. So we talk about inferiority complex. Somebody's inferiority complex, for example, which is what's sometimes called a popularized technicality, where we pull the jargon of a particular profession or group and use it because it sounds cool. As far as I recall, in Freudian psychology, an inferiority complex has to do with a person actually who's very brash and outspoken and loud, because he's covering up for inferiority. And they're just they heard this very oppressive inferiority complex, and that's so much cooler than saying shy or timid. Popularized technicality. There's also a lot of jargon that just comes and goes. A lot of popular expressions, things that they're like comets, they flash through the sky for a few moments and then they're gone. Pushing the envelope, thinking out of the box. Those are cliches also. They have a short life. So, and they're, again, for lazy people. You just rely on one of these easy cliches or these fashionable phrases, and it deprives you of the opportunity of thinking of something fresh and original and perhaps invigorating or still more clear. There are times when jargon serves the purpose. We do not have to reinvent a term for something that a term is already current for. So it has its place, it has its use. You don't have to be creative at every step. Yes?
Is the cliche and slang the same?
Is which and which the same?
The cliche and slang.
Is cliche and slang the same? No. A cliche is an overworked horse. You've heard it, positive alternative. How many times have you read that Krishna consciousness is a positive alternative? It's like, don't we have anything new to say? You're a positive alternative. Or I have a sheet. I'll give you if you look in the BBT style guide, there's a big long list of cliches, some of which are ISKCON cliches, and others not. Otherwise, I might throw it in the handout. But there's no end to them. There's cliches upon cliches upon cliches. But they're sort of well-worn, fresh when they were new, dull now that they're old phrases that are just cycled and recycled. Those are cliches. Slang, on the other hand, is again closer to jargon. It's informal language. Slang is informal language, usually belonging to a particular section of people. So there's black slang, there's criminal slang, there's computer programmer slang. There's sort of invented words or adopted or agreed upon words for things, and they can be very good. Slang can be very colorful, but again, there's what they call levels of diction. If you're writing a paper for Scientific American, you probably wouldn't say that a quark acts in kooky ways. Which is a perfectly good slang term, but that's not the place for if you say that it exhibits unconventional behavior or something suitable for that level of diction. But if you're talking like among friends, or you want to create a rapport with a sort of an audience, then you might say that, my wife's a kooky. Kookie's 1950s. It came from a television show, and there was a character who was named Cookie, so people became Cookie.
So what's the difference then between jargon and slang?
Well, let's see. Shall we consult our dictionary? Let us look and see the difference between jargon and slang. We'll see what we find. This is one of the things that, as an editor, you do. You go to the dictionary and say, what is the difference between jargon and slang? What's the difference between this and that? Jargon. Well, it starts out as confused, unintelligible language, but we probably want two. The technical terminology or characteristic idiom of a special activity or group. Technical terminology, so computer programmer jargon, their specialized language. that it can be used pejoratively. Obscure and often pretentious language marked by certain locutions and long words. I read your paper, but it was, you know, it was like mostly jargon. I couldn't get anything out of it. Or, I heard his speech, but it was just mostly jargon. You know, he's just trying to impress me with buzzwords and so on. Yeah, the language, especially the vocabulary, peculiar to a particular trade, profession, or group. Medical jargon works perfectly well. Doctors know what they're talking about when they use these words. When they talk about the ICU, they don't have to say anything else. Everybody knows what it means. Or if they say, you know, whatever it is, a red or a blue, or okay. Whereas slang, okay, jargon, language peculiar to a particular group, an informal, non-standard vocabulary composed typically of coinages, arbitrarily changed words, and extravagant, forced, or facetious figures of speech. So that sort of fits the feeling of slang more in my very informal usage and vocabulary, and characteristically more metaphorical, playful, elliptical, vivid, and ephemeral than ordinary language, as hit the road. The special vocabulary of thieves, vagabonds, so casual, playful, and so on. Slang is very good. There's black slang in America, African American slang, which is very creative and very fun. Nothing comes to mind right now, but they have lots of things. And there are other cultures also, plenty of them that have slang. It gives you a feel. And it gives you a sense of what you do with your dictionary. You look at it and you say, you know, what kind of word is this, and what are the other words that go, you know, that I can use instead. You're familiar with the thesaurus?
Yeah.
You know what a thesaurus is? Oh, okay. A thesaurus is basically a synonym dictionary. It's a dictionary of words that are, in some instances, interchangeable or related. Like doctor, medic, and so on.
Just thinking
Preparation, dish, so on. Synonyms or closely related words. Let's see. I'll give you an example. Thief, Judas, Tandit, betrayer, booster, brigand, buccaneer, burglar, catman, charlatan, cheat, con artist, con man, confidence man, convict, criminal, crook, cut purse, dacoit, deceiver, swindler, villain. These are all words that you could use for a thief. Now, which one do you want to use? Is he a swindler? Is he a con man? Is he a thief? Is he a deceiver? It depends on what feel you want to give, what kind of thief he might be, what other words are in your sentence. You might not want 7 words that start with D, and so you might not use dacoit.
the thief, the kind of thief that breaks into houses? Is a burglar?
A burglar breaks into houses. Then there's the thief. A cut purse is the person who robs you on the street by without your knowing it, literally cutting your pocket, and then where's my phone? Some of these words are a little older. Cut purse is rather out of use. So these are things you can find in thesaurus. The worst writers use this tool as a way of finding variety. You know, I said thief before, so I should say something not different now. How about burglar, or how about cut purse, or how? You know, so the burglar entered the house, and then the thief. And so they're looking for variety, or they're looking for bigger, more impressive words, or so on. So that's the misuse of the tool. The best use of the tool is to find the right word, not the bigger word necessarily, often the smaller word, the more precise word, the word that fits your context the best. The thesaurus can help you for that. Among the published printed thesauri, I recommend, they're all called Roget's, by the way, because the first person to come up with such a book was Peter Mark Roget. So ever since then, every thesaurus is called Roget's, just as almost every dictionary is called Webster's, even though Webster himself is long gone. But there's Roget's Third International Thesaurus, is the one that I used for many years and consider quite good. Some come in dictionary form, you know, A through Z, but Mr. Roget, or Dr. Roget's original plan had a different way of doing it, where you looked up categories, things were grouped in categories and subcategories and so on, and it's essentially a two-part program. You start here and then you go there. More cumbersome in some ways, but it gives you a much richer reach. That's the one that I used. There's a free online thesaurus that goes with Golden Dick and others called Moby Thesaurus, which gives a surprisingly wide variety of words. The downside of it is that it puts all the different senses together. It's just a dump of words, whereas Roget's Third International would classify them more. You can probably find a thesaurus in Word. You do find a thesaurus package with Word, with most word processors. I call it sort of so-so. It can be useful. But don't rely on the thesaurus as your only means of inspiration. Good. Sins to avoid. Okay. Am I in the right place? I believe I am. Yes. Use parallel structure. Use parallel structure. Another way to say this is to express coordinated ideas in similar form. We think in sequences like 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D, or conch, like in Mayapur, the conch building, the lotus building, the Gada building. And there's a likeness to it. There's a sense to it. A theme, if you will. Another way to say this is match parts. If this building is called a Gada, you're probably not going to call the next building name it after a river. You know, you'll have a Saraswati River building and a Jamuna building and the Ganga building and the Kaveri building, and then suddenly if you have a Gada building, it's like, what happened? So by having that, so as we're creatures who are made like that, we'd like to see consistency, we'd like to see coordination. When you dress, there's a coordination of the colors. It's not red, green, pink, and something totally, out there. Okay. A parallel structure gives order and power and clarity. This is Edward Gibbon, Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire. The various modes of worship which prevailed in the Roman world were all considered by the people as equally true, by the philosophers as equally false, and by the magistrate as equally useful. He's got a parallel structure there which gives balance and grace to his prose, and which also just makes it flow so naturally that you see that it gives a pleasure to the ear, and it gives an emphasis to his point. People equally true, philosophers equally false, the magistrate equally useful. He's put them all in the same form, in the same way, with only that one difference as to the point of view of the people involved. Parallel structure. It gives proverbs their longevity. Here today, gone tomorrow. If you said here today and by tomorrow you might be gone, you'd have a short-lived proverb. The proverb lives because of the parallel structure. Once burned, twice shy. I came, I saw, I conquered. Parallel structure. The glory that was Greece, the grandeur that was Rome, and we're given again. Coordinated ideas in matching form. Any questions on this so far? We're going to talk about it more. It lets you sustain long sentences. This is Lord Macaulay. All his books are written in a learned language, in a language which nobody hears from his mother or his nurse, in a language in which nobody ever quarrels or drives bargains or makes love, in a language in which nobody ever thinks. You see the parallel structure flowing throughout this, in a language, in a language, in a language, in which nobody ever A, nobody ever B, nobody ever C. That parallel structure, again, gives grace, gives clarity, gives a kind of pleasure. And in the clarity department, that parallel structure helps the reader see where you're going. You may not be doing a proverb, for example, or something as witty as Gibbon, but you want your reader to know where you're going. So if you're doing the same thing the same way throughout the sentence, the reader sees, this, and this. Going the same, it's not this, and clear? So you can move the sentence right along because the reader sees parallel, sees similar parts that match. Questions about this? It can be extremely powerful, parallel structure, when used in antithesis. You know what antithesis is? Antithesis. Contrast of opposites. Not that I loved Caesar less, but that I loved Rome more. Ask not what you can do for your country. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. He's got parallel structure with antithesis. Render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things which are God's. That's parallel with antithesis. Extremely powerful. But you can't do the antithesis unless you've got that parallel structure. You lose the power. You may say two things that are opposite, but you don't get that here today, gone tomorrow kind of antithesis that comes through so sharply and clearly. So, yeah. So there's that about parallel structure. Match parts. There's another consideration here in match parts. Not just this large concept of phrases that move in similar ways, but details also. The point of it is that you want to match in every respect. Krishna enjoys his pastimes both in the material and spiritual worlds. What's not quite right there?
He's transcendental. Because wherever Krishna goes.
No, it's not a philosophical question.
Yes.
Maybe you should go
Not both, but
Krishna enjoys his pastimes both in the material and spiritual worlds.
Maybe
Add
he
verbs
should.
to end.
He enjoys his pastimes
Both
in the material as in the
Just
spiritual
enjoys
world
his pastimes.
also.
Material worlds.
Enjoys
Material worlds, so that's parallel structure. He enjoys his pastimes in the material worlds and the spiritual.
Yeah, you've got both in A and B. Now it would work this way. In both A and B. But if I go back, then it should be both in the material world and in the spiritual world. Now my parts match, both in A and in B. Or alternatively, in both A and B. It's not a big deal. It's not, but I don't know where I'm going. But it leads to confusion. I'll give you another example. This, it just came to my mind. There was a court decision that just came down in America favoring the BBC, happily. Granted decision. This is the decision, yeah. This is the decision of the learned judge.
GBC has jurisdiction over
Order. And watch this one carefully. Defendants are permanently enjoined from A, holding themselves out or acting as officers, directors, or representatives of Bharati Center, Inc. B, interfering with the current director's oversight and supervision of the operation of Bharati Center, Inc. C, interfering with any congregant of Bharati Center, Inc. in attending services and or worshiping at Bharati Center, Inc.'s house of worship. D, D, attempting to sell the real property of Bharati Center Inc. Oh no, this one's fine, actually. Good, I'm sorry. There's another place where she screwed up. Let me find it. Oh, I know what it's all about. She's really got it right there. And why we followed all the way to the end. And F, retaining any books or records pertaining to Bharati Center Inc. You can't do any of these things. You're enjoined from A, B, C, D, E, and F. But where was it? I was looking at her, and she didn't quite get it right. I think it must be with this.
Is there a review, is there room for,
Here it is. Defendants, and this is this is the same statement, really. She just said down below that they can't do A, they can't do B, they're enjoined from holding themselves out as officers, interfering with any congregant, interfering with the directors, attempting to sell the real property, acting as signers of accounts, retaining any books. It all goes parallel. Now let's look up toward the top to see what she granted. Defendant's request for injunctive, she's granting the following request. Defendant's request for injunctive relief enjoining Britain and the remaining directors from A, holding themselves out as officers or directors, B, interfering with the oversight and supervision, C, interfering with any congregant's attendance or worship, D, attempting to sell the real property, E, acting as signatory of the accounts, and that was D? Yeah, it was E, and then E, she's got the same letter again, let's say it's F, compelling defendants to turn over any book or records of Bharati Center in their possession. She just went out of sync. We granted your request, enjoining these people from doing A, B, C, D, E, and compelling defendants to turn over anything. What happened? 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I went in a different direction.
Yeah.
So she's not, we understand what she means,
They shouldn't be that together.
but it's adding it in this form, especially when you're doing a double E, but putting it in this form confuses, because we have all these things that you're forbidden to do, and then one thing that you're supposed to do, listed as if it were one of the things that you weren't supposed to. So it'll still hold, it'll still accomplish everything that needs to be accomplished, but it's just a little bit inarticulate. It's just a little bit confused.
this is how the lawyers use these type of misunderstandings sometimes.
So it's an example of why you want parallel structure. A, B, C, D. If I'm enjoining, then I'm enjoining A, I'm enjoining B. If I'm doing something like enjoined from holding themselves out, interfering, attempting, acting. Now you don't want an infinitive in the next one. To return. You want another gerund, returning. Parallel, your parts should match.
See the holes.
Otherwise, a fantastic judgment, by the way.
Yeah,
It's really most welcome. This is going to give you another example of the little things that we get to. Okay. The conclusion is that Sri Sri Radha Krishna, their associates, abode, and paraphernalia are all wholly spiritual, without any tinge of mundane qualities. Good, right?
Yeah.
Where am I not matching?
There's
Where am I not matching?
And Shri Radha Krishna and the associates.
Yeah,
And abode
it should
and
be as,
paraphernalia.
it should be
all
an
these
and
things.
or a semicolon.
And.
yeah, the problem is I've got A, there B, there C, there D.
Mhm.
So either I want that Sri Sri Radha Krishna
And
or a semicolon.
their abode,
associates and.
associates, abode, and paraphernalia. Now I'm in business.
No, and abode.
And-
abode.
Their abode,
And before.
This is
now
fine.
I'm good.
This is fine,
Yeah.
yeah. It
Or I
agrees.
can do this.
Yeah.
Well, you can do that too, yeah.
And their paraphernalia.
Now I match again. Sri Sri Radha Krishna, sorry. And there. Their associates, their abode, and their paraphernalia are all spiritual. Or Radha Krishna and their associates,
And
their,
abode.
or I could say, and I could say that too. That still matches. But I want to be consistent. If it's the apples, the oranges, and the tangerines, it shouldn't be the apples, oranges, and the tangerines.
You're right. You want the oranges and
Or the apples, the oranges, and tangerines. They should all match. The parts should match.
what would
The red, the white, and the blue. Or the red, white, and blue. Matching. The right and the left. And the center. Or the right, left, and center. But not the right, center, and the left. There's just that little awkwardness. Everybody will still know what you mean. But there's that little awkwardness because you've missed matching the parts. Is it clear? There's a lot of things that can go wrong and can mismatch. I think there's something on Instructor White about this. Let's see. Match parts, match parts. You'll get, in the college essay, match parts, right? This principle, that of parallel construction, requires that expressions similar in content and function be outwardly similar. The likeness of form enables the reader to recognize more readily the likeness of content and function. The unskilled writer often violates this principle, mistakenly believing in the value of constantly varying the form of expression. When repeating a statement to emphasize it, the writer may need to vary its form. Otherwise, the writer should follow the principle of parallel construction. Let me give an example. Formerly, science was taught by the textbook method, which now the laboratory method is employed. But on the other hand, formerly science was taught by the textbook method, now it is taught by the laboratory method. Much clearer, because the same thing is said the same way, or a similar thing is said the same way. Then articles and prepositions, like in is a preposition, the French, the Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese should be the French, the Italians, the Spanish, and the Portuguese. In spring, summer, or in winter. Good? In spring, in summer, or in winter? Good or no?
No good.
Why? In spring, in summer, or in winter? Or in spring, summer, or winter?
Yeah.
One or the other. But not both. Here's another thing. Some words require a particular preposition in certain idiomatic uses. When such words are joined in a compound construction, all the appropriate prepositions must be included unless they're the same. Here's the example. His speech was marked by disagreement and scorn for his opponent's position. What's the problem? His speech was marked by disagreement and scorn for his opponent's position.
By disagreement and by.
By disagreement,
And by
And-
should be. And by.
yeah.
And by is.
You could say by disagreement and by scorn. But the revised example, his speech was marked by disagreement with and scorn for.
Okay.
You need two separate prepositions there. By the way, this can be a bit of an awkward way of saying things when you have these two sets of different prepositions. Disagreement with and scorn for. You might want to say disagreement with his opponent's position and scorn for it.
Yeah.
Either one will work, but you might find it more powerful. Might, not always. To avoid that housekeeping function of having to keep separate sets of prepositions going. Disagreement with and scorn for. Disagreement with is the position and scorn for it. It can be more powerful. Correlative expressions, both and, not but, not only but, also first, second, and third, and so on, should be followed by the same grammatical construction. It was both a long ceremony and very tedious. It was both a long ceremony and very tedious.
Very tedious one.
Both
Very
They were
tedious
both a
ceremony.
long ceremony and very tedious.
Could you say it was both a long and very tedious ceremony?
It was both a long and a very tedious ceremony. The ceremony was both long
And
and tedious. It was both a long ceremony and a very tedious ordeal. Parallel. The ceremony was both long and tedious. A time not for words but action. Time not for words but action.
But
For action.
But
Not-
for action.
Not for words but
for action.
for action. Matching parts. Either you must grant his request or incur his ill will. Either you must grant his request or incur his ill will. It sounds okay. Let me write it out. Either you must grant his request or incur his ill will.
Or you
there is
must.
the will.
God is good.
Or must incur.
You must either grant
Or you must.
Must incur.
Either you must grant his request or incur his ill will.
Oh, must incur.
Master.
You want to put a must there?
Yeah. Or you must.
You will.
Either you must grant his request or must incur his ill
I
will.
think it's you must, but
Okay,
you incur.
You.
You incur his ill.
You.
Yeah. This works.
Yeah.
We take out the must.
Is a-
You take out the
must
must.
service or
Either you must do this or you must do that.
Or can you say,
And if you said you must either?
Yes, that's the alternative. You must either
Yeah.
can you say, in-
grant his request
Or you
or, and now this would be no longer matching,
Yeah.
or you must either grant his request or incur his ill will.
grant his request or
You must
incur?
either grant,
Can you just say,
Can you make
simply grant his request?
yeah,
Or-
grant his request or
Or
incur his
his
ill will. I'm not looking at shortening the sentence here.
Okay,
I'm
okay,
just
and
looking,
I'm doing nothing.
I'm glad you're on it, but here it's a question of matching parts.
Sorry.
That's all right. These eithers and neithers and ones and twos and
I
threes,
know all.
Yeah, to manage.
all sorts of opportunities here
They have,
for just going slightly wrong.
this is.
And this is the business of editors, making sure that all the words are in the right place. And part of that is seeing that your parts match. For the same reason that you wouldn't want to have one arm longer than the other. You'd like your parts to match. My objections are, first, the injustice of the measure. Second, that it is unconstitutional. I'll write it out. My objections are, first, my objections are, first, the injustice of the matter. Second, that it is unconstitutional.
Second, injustice. Second, injustice.
Second, injustice.
First,
That it is
that it
unjust.
is the measure, and second,
That's the matter.
then injustice.
First, that it is,
Say it again.
both of the structures should be the same.
Constructions should match.
Yeah, and they don't.
They don't, do they?
No, no, objections. Okay.
There's the injustice of the matter and that it is unconstitutional. The parts don't match. It's like,
The unconstitutional
Constitutional.
of the matter.
how would you fix it?
First, that it is the justice of the matter.
First,
That it is the
That
justice
is
of the matter.
not,
first,
that,
one man at a time.
First, that it is the justice of the matter.
First, that,
it is,
It is injustice of the matter.
that doesn't quite work.
That the matter is injustice.
Unjust.
first, that it is.
Injustice.
Is unjust.
Injust.
Unjust. Yeah, there you go. Say unjust. First, that the matter is unjust. Second, that it is unconstitutional.
Yes.
It is constitutional.
Because then you have to.
Does that work?
Yes. Then you have two adjectives. Adjectives.
Yeah. You've got a noun up top, injustice, and then the
Yeah.
adjective unconstitutional this way. We've got first, that it's unjust. Second, that it is unconstitutional. Or you could say, first, the injustice of the matter. Second, what?
It's unconstitutional nature.
Yeah,
Then
it's unconstitutional nature.
It being against the
also.
Constitutional nature. Yeah, first the injustice of the matter, second is unconstitutional nature. Or if you wanted to save a word,
Reality, yeah.
That's the whole mouth though, isn't
No,
it?
but then
is what?
it's off the matter and it's
Yeah.
matter than just the.
That's very right.
Yeah, and who you're writing for, your audience.
Yeah, I mean, this is getting a little, I've got a 7-syllable word there. I like this more. First, that it's unjust. Second, that it's unconstitutional. But the other one, in terms of matching parts, at least matches.
Yeah.
It's a more highfalutin match, but it's a match.
Yeah.
Whereas the first one, the injustice of the matter, second, that it is unconstitutional, is a mismatch. So I want to match. And yes, I'd rather match smoothly and shortly than have to resort to 7 syllables and so on. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Good.
This is so important though, isn't it?
It is important.
If we
All of this
thumbs up all the
stuff
time-
adds up. As our Kilpatrick had said earlier, it's the little things,
The deficit.
the slight hesitations, the hesitancies, the moment of doubt that gets in the way of our message.
I have a question.
Yes.
Listen, it says, in the second one, it says first, that the matter is unjust. Second, that it's unconstitutional. You don't say first is that the matter is unjust. Second, that
Well, yeah.
it is unconstitutional.
I left out the beginning of the sentence.
It is.
Yeah, this is,
My objections are, first, that the matter is unjust, second, that it's unconstitutional.
or illustration.
Okay. Any other questions about matching parts? Okay. I'm going to give you
That's the match.
okay, we come to questions of word order. In what order do we put our words? We already know from yesterday that in questions we invert verbs and their auxiliaries. Why should I do this? Rather than why I should do this. Keep related words together. Keep related words together. For several reasons. They're easier to comprehend when they're together. It's easier for you as the writer to keep track of what you're saying. And you can prevent disasters that may occur when unrelated words fall into the wrong region. I think I have some examples of that. Let me just see. I have some more. I have a nice list of bad things that happen to good people, so to speak.
I don't know.
Vacation special, have your home exterminated. Get rid of ants. Zap does the job in 24 hours. For rent, 6-room hated apartment. Used cars, why go elsewhere to be cheated?
Come here first.
That's good. Yeah, this is honest.
Those weren't the ones I was thinking about. Let's see. Oh, here's some more. Illiterate? Write today for free help. Semi-annual after Christmas sale. 3-year-old teacher needed for preschool. Experience preferred.
Oh no.
Girl wanted to assist magician in cutting off head illusion. Blue Cross on salary. Blue Cross is an American insurance scheme. Okay. Girl wanted the mixing bowl set designed to please a cook with round bottom for efficient feeding. Now there's an example of words that haven't been kept where they belong. Obviously it should be mixing bowl set with a round bottom for efficient feeding, designed to please a cook. But putting those words at the end is what gives us the problem. Okay, I'm going to skip the rest of that file. Keeping your words together. Do I have anything else in there? Just think for a second. Keeping your words together adjacent in the right places just makes life so much easier. It helps having the mixing set where it belongs and the cook where she belongs. I'd like to have some more examples. I just don't have some handy. Let's see if I can. Ooh, strong and white again. I bet they have those. Yes, bless their heart. That's probably why I didn't have it. He noticed a large stain in the rug that was right in the center.
The rug with the stain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it the rug or the stain that was in the center? So if you say he noticed a large stain right in the center of the rug, there's no ambiguity.
The rug right in the middle of this.
You can call your mother in London and tell her all about George's taking you out to dinner for just $2.
Sounds like the call is $2.
Maybe the call, yeah, for just $2 you can call her mom. For
Yeah, maybe he's calling.
Yeah, for just $2 you can call your mother.
Or taking her out for $2. It's not so great.
That would sound better. For the mother.
Keep related words together. Participial phrase at the beginning of a sentence should refer to its grammatical subject. This is again the order of words. You know what a participial phrase is? Giving trouble to all the residents of Vrindavan, Aristashura tore up the earth with his ribs. That giving trouble to, that clause is a participial phrase. If you're not comfortable with that, look up. I'm sorry for the grammar, but it's these gerund phrases, these ing phrases, giving trouble to everyone, dishing out the prasadam, these sort of words. They went on Harinam, giving books to everyone in sight, or spreading mercy to everyone. These are participial phrases. And when you've got them at the beginning of a sentence, they should refer to the grammatical subject. That's the rule, and because it's the expectation of the reader that this is what you're going to do.
Where is this?
So
An example of of how you can go wrong is walking down the street and the house looks strange, as indeed you would expect. Because the participial phrase is meant or is assumed to go with the grammatical subject, which in this case is the house.
What phrase, Mark? What's it called? What is it called?
Participial phrase. We expect that the subject, the house, is modified by the phrase, walking down the house, walking down the street. Walking down the street, the house looked very, very strange. The house was walking. So you could do, as I walked down the street, or walking down the street, I thought the house seemed strange. But walking down the street, the house seems strange. It's very strange indeed. After traveling widely throughout the world, Scotland is still my favorite place. It's a common error. You find it often.
Yeah.
Right? You just need to know the rule. I found that one of my god-sisters wrote a book. She had something that was really awful. What they call dangling participles. And it really gave it a ridiculous meaning. And she sent me the manuscript, I saw it, she fixed it, all was well. But you can really be in trouble. Signed to an exclusive recording contract by RCA, Ted Jolson's albums have consistently won critical acclaim. Signed to an exclusive recording contract, his albums have consistently won critical acclaim.
Sound like the
Nothing
albums.
dramatic.
The albums.
Sounds like the albums have been signed up to an exclusive recording contract, when really it was Ted, what's his name? So you want signed to an exclusive recording contract, Ted has produced albums that, or after he signed with RCA, his albums, something like that, but not what we've got. Okay. We're talking about word order. The end of a sentence is a power position. The end of a sentence is a power position. What comes at the end gets special power. The end of a sentence, of a paragraph, of a chapter, of a book, these are all power positions. And so you can arrange your sentences, your chapters, your books in such a way that you have no power. This is Abraham Lincoln's celebrated Gettysburg Address. We here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. He ends with power.
Is that why we don't end in prepositions?
Is that why we don't end in prepositions? Yes and no. There's a rule, often broken and often rightly broken, because the rule is not really a rule, that you should never end the sentence with a preposition. The rule can be safely disregarded. Winston Churchill was famous for saying, this is the kind of pedantry up with which we shall not put. Because you shouldn't have put up with, because that's ending a sentence with a preposition. But this is the kind of pedantry up with which we shall not put. So you're fine ending with a preposition when it's idiomatic, when it's purposeful, but prepositions aren't necessarily the strongest words and may not suit your purpose. It's not that you should never end with one, and it may be strong. This is the kind of thing we won't put up with.
Yeah.
That's strong. We'll have nothing, it's the kind of thing we'll have nothing to do with. No need to rearrange your sentence to keep from ending with a bit. You're fine. Just keep in mind, and it's not that I have to be in some sort of confusion and angst about the end of every sentence. And it's not always that power is what I'm aiming at. There are other considerations. But keep in mind, that's a PowerPoint. Even the end of a phrase is a PowerPoint. Because of his obstinacy. Vidura left, by the way. You said because of the obstinacy of Dhritarashtra. Now you're putting the focus on Dhritarashtra because he's at the end. But if you say because of Dhritarashtra's obstinacy, now obstinacy takes focus. Follow? No? It's a natural thing in speech. Let's see. Somebody have a copy of that wonderful book that I wrote? Oh, he brought a whole batch more. There he is. For the eager multitude, that multitude of devotees eager to get a copy of my book, we brought some more today, and they are available. We may not fully understand the reason for such events, but we're sure the events do have reasons. And chance, that happened by chance, is a non-reason, a non-explanation. It happened because it could happen. Even if we say it happened because the odds favored it, we still have to ask, why? You can see that the ends are places where there's power. We still have to ask, why? If I said, why is a question we still have to ask, I lose power. We still have to ask, why? We can say a person is born because a person is born who he or she is because of genetics, because of biochemistry, or simply because two people had sex. But even then, we still have to look for earlier causes. So I'm focusing my reader. There's got to be a cause. There's got to be a cause. Why was a particular person born to inherit a particular biochemical genetic makeup? Or if that question seems too biased because it quietly assumes that a person differs from the body to which he or she is born, we can even ask, why is it that two particular parents came together to have sex? Yes, we know about love and physical attraction, but if we take that attraction and trace the causal chain as far back as we can, for generations, for eons, do we finally wind up with nothing more than chemicals? coming into existence for no reason, and again for no reason, rubbing against one another and pushing and pulling, attracted to one another in a spontaneous, prebiotic sexual heat. So I think you see what I'm doing there. I'm putting emphasis, I'm taking advantage of the ends of sentences. Not each one of them has to be a punch. Not each one has to go, oh, oh. Or wow, wow. I don't necessarily want to do that every time. But I want to keep in mind that that's a power position. I'll give you another example. It's a power position in communications. I was on a radio show against one of these deprogramming guys. And he said something, I forget what it was, and I had a point that I was making. I think my point was that he was a liar. We caught him lying. And I said, you know, you just, we can't believe you because you've been found telling lies and so on. And the show was just reaching the end. And I could see that the host wanted to give a chance for each side. So he's like going like this for me. And I just kept going for the next like 15 or 20 seconds. And I had the last word.
Right? You had the power position.
I had the power position. So that last word is a position of power. I do that sometimes. It's not a big deal, but in this book where I'm giving possible interpretations. I say, it could be this, or it could be this, or it could be this. And usually it's the last one that I favor. And I don't come out and say, I think this one's more likely. But just by putting it last, I give it more importance.
Generally, the audience remembers the last.
You remember the last word, you know, famous last words.
Yeah.
So that end of a sentence, or the end of a chapter, the end of a book. There's an example I'd love to show you, but I don't have the book with me. So that end is really powerful. Okay, ready for some candy? I said that I would give you a Tom Wolfe.
Oh, Jack.
And now that you know about putting related words together, now that you know about parallel form, now that you know about all of those things, and now that you've heard about short sentences and all of that, here's a long sentence from Tom Wolfe. He's talking about the breaking the news to an Army wife or an Air Force wife that her husband has crashed. Just crashed his plane. When the final news came, there would be a ring at the front door. A wife in this situation finds herself staring at the front door as if she no longer owns it or controls it. And outside the door would be a man come to inform her that unfortunately something has happened out there. And her husband's body now lies incinerated in the swamps or the pines or the palmetto grass, burned beyond recognition, which anyone who has been around an air base for very long, fortunately Jane had not, realized was quite an artful euphemism to describe a human body that now looked like an enormous fowl that is burned up in a stove, burned a blackish brown all over, greasy and blistered, fried, in a word, with not only the entire face and all the hair and the ears burned off, not to mention all the clothing, but also the hands and feet, with what remains of the arms and legs bent at the knees and elbows and burned into absolutely rigid angles, burned a greasy blackish brown like the bursting body itself, So that this husband, father, officer, gentleman, this ornamentum of some mother's eye, His Majesty the baby of just 20-odd years back, has been reduced to a charred hulk with wings and shanks sticking out of it. I shouldn't have used the word candy because this is
Not so sweet.
But that's
That's big.
to illustrate how the word count function of word works.
130.
So 226 words. 226 words. We were struggling with words that were like sentences that were like 40 for their unintelligibility, their impossibility. And here he's got 226. And is there any doubt at any point about where you're going with the sentence?
No.
226 word sentence that just keeps you moving right along. And he makes it look easy to do.
Oh, yeah.
It's just natural sounding talk. But I guarantee you that he slaved over that sentence. Because being simple, direct, plain, and following patterns of consistency and intelligibility and grouping things together, at the same time being graphic, and this is artful work. So 226 words, one sentence.
And it all flows. It's very good.
And it just flows right along.
It's very nice.
So without parallel structure, without a sense of where you're going, without grouping words together, imagine if you just stumbled in one little place because there was a misplaced modifier, one of those either's or one of those ins that was in, or a series of these and one of them was left out. It'd just be enough to spoil it slightly, to hang you up but instead he's got you going all the way along. Burned, a blackish brown, fried in the word. Burned, a greasy blackish brown like the bursting body itself. Burned into absolute ends at the knees and elbows. So he's using parallel, the adjective. It's burned, it's bent, it's burned, it's bursting.
He's using the metaphor of the fowl at the beginning, and then at the end he uses the wings and the shanks.
Yeah, that's another thing. He's, as we have apples and oranges and so on, so he's got this metaphor of a fowl, a bird, and he carries it right along. So you can practically see this bird from the oven lying on the airstrip, burned beyond recognition. Yes.
And actually, without knowing, the author is following the rules of Sanskrit poetry. Not probably you know that there is a rule that rasas should never be specified. Like you should never say that the mother is sad because it's so shallow to say it. Here it's just indicated what she feels.
Yeah, that's another principle that we'll talk about, I think, before we're done.
Show not tell.
Show not tell. Yeah. Yeah, it never said she was shocked. It never said she was in anxiety. But she's staring at the door as if she no longer owns it. And his introduction to this, before he gets here, is equally artful. So, a master at the art of writing, not just for for so many reasons. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.